Good day, everyone. What's up? My name is Mr. Valois. I'm very excited you can join me today for a brief glance at the International Baccalaureate Group 2 Language B Standard Level course. I'm going to be breaking down the course so that you can properly prepare for the assessment and crush it in year 2. Score my favorite number, a perfect 7. All right, and so just before we begin, I want to let you know that I do not work for the IB. I have been a French IB teacher for 5 years, so I do know a thing or two about the course. However, nothing's going to replace using the guide and referring to the guide, and of course the hours you spend in the classroom with your teacher. This is just basically a general explanation that I'm making to help students and teachers so that we get a better idea of how to succeed, and you can build off of some of the tips I'll share you from my experience in working with students. So let's get started. The Language BSL Standard Level course can be considered somewhat of an intermediate level language acquisition course. So you should have some prior knowledge of the target language before you begin. It's a 2-year course with expectations that you develop your speaking, your listening, your reading, and your writing in whatever language you've chosen, whether it be Mandarin, German, French. Let's get into the course themes. Whatever the language is that you're studying, you're going to be dealing with course themes, which are kind of like the course units. This will help you expand your vocabulary, your communication skills, and your knowledge of the cultural diversity of the target language. Each theme involves studying a variety of topics. Theme 1, identities. You may be looking at topics like self-expression, lifestyles, physical well-being, beliefs and values, subcultures, those kinds of topics. The second theme is experiences. You might possibly study daily routines, events, holidays, festivals, life stories. Moving on to the third course theme, human ingenuity. Topics would include technology, creativity, media, transportation, entertainment. Then we have our fourth theme, social organization. This would look more specifically at communities, at neighborhoods, workplaces, social relationships, social issues, education. And lastly, our fifth course theme, sharing the planet. Of course, you would be looking at ideas like sustainability, environmental issues, international relations, equality, pollution, and so forth. How are we going to study these units and these topics, or these course themes and these topics? The answer is that there are going to be a variety of texts in 3 different categories. The first, personal texts. So these would be much more informal, casual, relaxed tone kind of text. So this would be maybe personal emails, writing a postcard, a personal letter, an entry into a diary. The second category of texts are the professional texts. So this would be more formal and more common in businesses and organizations. So you might be using essays or formal letters, surveys, a set of instructions, and then finally we have our mass media texts. Those are texts that are designed to reach a big public audience. They could be on TV, they could be on the internet, but they could also be an announcement in a community center. These could include everything from films, advertisements, podcasts, and web pages. Let's get into the big deal, the assessments. Okay, let's start with the external assessment, which generally will take place in May during the student's second year of the course. The first assessment, external assessment, is paper 1. This is where your writing skills will shine. You're going to be given about an hour and 15 minutes to complete a written response, which will represent 25% of your final grade. You'll be presented 3 different written tasks, each based on the course themes, but fortunately, you'll only be asked to choose one, and your answer should be between 250 and 400 words. You don't necessarily need to go into the assessment knowing a million facts about each theme, but they can be used to support your ideas. All right, let's go over a few examples. So, first example, let's say the course theme is on experiences. Your writing response, your prompt, could be something along the lines of that you're being asked to write a personal letter to a friend overseas about how the COVID-19 pandemic has been affecting your life and your education. You may also be prompted to ask your friend about how well they have been coping. So that situation will require more of an informal informal tone because you're writing to a friend. That's your audience. Second example, let's say the course theme is on sharing the planet. You notice that there's often heavy car traffic in the entrances and exits of your local shopping center and that there are no bike racks on site. Write a proposal to the administration of the shopping center about the negative effects of traffic on the environment and the business owners inside the mall, and the positive effects of the creation of bike racks could have. Remember, you would be writing a professional text, so use an appropriate and formal tone in your letter. A third example, let's say the course theme is human ingenuity. You found that your laptop is too small to enjoy watching videos and films, so you decided, like me over the pandemic, to purchase a video projector through the internet to enjoy better viewing experiences. The product arrived a week late, there were a couple defects, and you received poor customer service from the provider. You don't usually do this, but you feel compelled to write a review on the website. So while maintaining a polite, formal tone, describe your customer experience and explain how you would like the situation to be rectified. Now, how are you going to be assessed? That's important, right? Paper 1 is going to be evaluated by 3 different criteria, and this is what you need to know to succeed. A, the first criterion, language. So make sure you're using an appropriate vocabulary and some idioms. Also, that your grammar is used effectively and you're showing off some complex skills. Lastly, that the few mistakes you're making in your writing are not interfering with the message that you're trying to get across. Second criterion, B, message. Stay relevant. Don't talk about anything that's not related to the prompt. Your ideas are also going to be fully developed. You've added relevant details and examples, and that your ideas are clearly presented and your response is well structured and has a logical flow. The third and final criterion, C, conceptual understanding. You've chosen an appropriate text type. You've chosen the right register, the tone is right, conventions, and you've also clearly demonstrated an understanding of the context, the purpose, and your audience. Now, how are you going to succeed on these? With Monsieur Valois' tips for paper 1. For criterion A, language. I want you to become familiar with the idioms and expressions in the target language. Sometimes they don't translate properly from your mother tongue, so I suggest at the beginning of year 1, you create a document called idioms, and that way you can consistently add idioms as you go along, and you can practice using them in writing and speaking situations throughout the course. Another tip for the criterion B, message. Study vocabulary based on each theme. Your ability to use these words, these key words, are going to provide so much more depth and relevance to your response. You're going to look like a genius, all right? And lastly, the third criterion C, conceptual understanding. Make sure that you are familiar with the variety of different texts. You've already at some point in your life written personal emails. You've already read a set of instructions or read articles on news sites. So feel confident in that you already know from your life experience how these should be read or how these should be written. Okay, nothing beats practice over these 2 years, and hopefully in your class you'll have a lot of time to do that. But if you're a little unsure, just trust your gut. You've seen these things before. Now, let's go into paper 2. Paper 2 is also part of the external assessment. It's entirely about your ability to understand receptive skills of reading and listening. It's going to last an hour and 45 minutes, and both the listening and reading components are going to make up 25% of your final grade each. That's 50% of your final grade. And it goes without saying that the topics and content presented in the listening and reading assessments are going to be linked to the course themes and employ personal, professional, and mass media text types. The reading and listening assessments each contain 3 passages. So for each, you're going to be required to answer questions that typically are going to include multiple choice questions, short answer questions, true or false, mix and match. You would not be required to provide long answer response questions in this assessment because you already did that in paper 1, son. Important. You will not have to memorize facts or specific topics from the course. Okay, the passages themselves in this assessment are going to contain all the facts and information on the topics that you'll need. All right, Monsieur Valois tips for paper 2. How do you prepare for something you may not have covered in class? Folks, make sure that you expose yourself to media that involve you actively listening to the content in the target language. As I always tell my students in my French class, do not be a stale baguette. Okay, find an interview find an interesting podcast out there. There's got to be one on a topic that you like in the target language, or stream a movie in the target language, put on the subtitles if necessary. If you're interested in current events, go out there and find news segments. That way you can also connect what you're hearing to the images, and never feel shy to press pause and practice repeating what you've just heard. This is going to help your pronunciation, this is going to help your intonation, and that's going to go a long way for you in the internal assessment. Speaking of which, let's talk about the standard level internal assessment, which will happen at some point prior to the EAs during the second year of the course. This has always been my favorite assessment. You know why? Because it requires me as the teacher to be involved, and that's pretty awesome. So the IA consists of interactive skills in the form of an oral assessment. It's going to last for about 12 to 15 minutes. It's going to be worth 25% of your final grade. And although it's internally assessed, your teacher is going to be making a recording of this conversation, sending it off to the IB, where it's going to be externally moderated as well. This internal assessment is broken down into 3 parts. The first task, requires you, the student, to prepare individually about a visual stimulus. Now, what's a visual stimulus? I'll show you a little later on, but basically it's an image, it's an ad, it's a poster, it's an illustration that's going to contain little or no words from your target language. It's going to have some inference to your target culture, and at least one of the course themes is going to be labeled as well. There should be a lot of elements in the picture or the image that are going to allow you to discuss beyond just saying this image is cool. You'll be presented with 2 visual stimuli at the beginning of the assessment. Each are going to be labeled to a different course theme. So, for instance, if the image shows a crowd of people protesting outside of a government building, that could be labeled as a social organization, right? As an example. You're going to make a choice between the 2 stimuli. You're going to choose one, and then you're going to be given 15 minutes to get going on working on it. During that time, you're going to be taking notes. You can only do a maximum of 10 bullet points, so it's not like you're going to be preparing a whole paragraph to just read. That's not really the point. Moving on to the second portion of the IA. Okay, the second task is going to require you to engage in a conversation with your teacher, who's going to ask you open-ended questions about the visual stimulus you just ended up discussing. Some of those questions might be about clarifying things that you had mentioned in your presentation, your interpretation of the ideas implied in the image, comparisons and connections with other cultural experiences you might have, demonstrating your appreciation and your knowledge of the target culture, and this should last between 4 to 5 minutes. And then the third task, you're gonna move the visual stimulus out of it, and your teacher is gonna be engaging you on questions and a conversation based on a different course theme. Okay, these are going to be open-ended questions that, again, are going to be asking for you to seek to be able to interpret what you've learned about, make connections and comparisons with other cultural experiences you've had, allow you to demonstrate your appreciation of the target culture. So it's really not too different from the second task, the conversation. The key difference is that it's about a different course theme. And this part of the IA is going to be lasting 5 to 6 minutes. Now, like everything else, all the other assessments, you're going to be evaluated according to criteria. The first criteria is language. In order to shine, you're going to be expected to apply a varied vocabulary and also idiomatic expressions. So remember, you got to learn those in this SL level. Your grammar should be effective and show off your skills here. You can make mistakes, but they should be only kind of minor mistakes, and they shouldn't impede in understanding what you're trying to communicate. And also your pronunciation and intonation are on point. They should be hot like fire. They should be clear and coherent, and your teacher's gonna love it. The next criterion, B1, the message. This is B1 is about the visual stimulus. So when you were describing it and your personal interpretations, basically that you were on point with those again, and that you made some clear links to the target culture and to the course theme. B2, the second part of the message. Now, this one is more about the conversations that you're going to have afterwards. This implies that your responses are going to be consistently appropriate. You're going to develop your personal interpretations. You're going to have some attempts to engage the teacher into the conversation too, so you can flip it on them and ask them some questions. It's not even that you can, you should. If you want to get the perfect score on this, you have to be able to show your conversational skills in this. And lastly, the last criterion is on communication. Your responses, believe it or not, have to be in the target language. Duh, I mean, like what else would you be talking about? You should also demonstrate understanding, obviously, of the target language, and your participation is sustained. As much as you can, try not to stall. I know it's tough. I know it can be stressful, but this is going to go into my first tip right now. Monsieur Valois' tips on how to rock your internal assessment. First and most importantly, stay calm. Be confident. Be cool out there. Be cash. You got this. Also, know how to say foreground, middle ground, and background in the target language. This is going to allow you to be able to describe, identify all kinds of items and people in the images in relation to where they are to each other. Also, it's important for you to say what you think you see, right? Maybe you perceive certain emotions that are present in the image. Maybe people look gloomy, maybe people look scared, maybe people look super optimistic, maybe they're celebrating. Also remember, the more inferences you can make to the target culture and to international mindedness in general, the more the IB is going to fall in love with your work. Okay, this is the person they want you to become. So keep that in mind. And of course, try to avoid using like. Try and work that out of your system. And also, it's really important in standard level for you to get out of your shell, in the sense of get out of your shell and ask the teacher questions. Get them engaged too. Make it a fun conversation. You control this. Okay, it's not just the teacher asking you questions and you're static and answering them back. You got to be engaged. So let's go over an example here. I'm going to put up a visual stimulus here of the cleanup effort after an oil tanker collided with a reef off of Mauritius. The theme is sharing the planet. So, you choose this stimulus, you're given 15 minutes, and now you're saying, okay, what can I present on? First, you could describe what's going on in the foreground, you could describe what's going on in the middle ground and the background. Discuss what colors you see. Okay, there should be a variety of different colors out there, so make sure you know the colors. Maybe there's something that seems to have occurred in the image. You can elaborate on this. What does it look like happened in this image? Well, I think it's kind of clear that there was an accident, right? Where could this be? What kind of climate is present? What kind of ecosystem is present? You could discuss what people are doing. You could be maybe have an awareness of who the people are, what expressions they have, what the mood is. Could you make a suggestion about what time of day it is, or maybe what time of the year it is, what season it is? Now, in making a reference to the course theme of sharing the planet, in this case, it's pretty easy, I think, because you can tell that there's been some kind of environmental damage. There's an oil spill, there's a cleanup effort. So it wouldn't be that difficult to make some links to, environmental issues like habitat loss, pollution, dependence on fossil fuels, even climate change, biodiversity, species loss. This, I think, if sharing the planet, there's a lot to talk about here. What might be difficult is to talk about the target culture. You don't know where this is. I told you this was in Mauritius, but the image doesn't necessarily imply that, right? So how can you deal with images like this that don't have inherently obvious cultural elements of the target culture on display? You're gonna have to be creative. Now we know, at least in this case, every country in the world almost has strong dependencies on fossil fuels. Most of them do. So almost whatever your target culture is, you could talk about how that society has either increased or reduced their use on fossil fuels, what their energy consumption's like, what their quality of life is. So with these tips and this example, you can be sure that you are going to crush this IA. All right? So that is the IB Language B SL course. I I hope that this video was worth your time. If you found it useful, please share it to your friends, share it to fellow students, share it to your teacher. Feel free to drop a comment or ask a question below. And yeah, make sure to subscribe, as I'll also be producing some videos on language B ab initio, on the HL language B course, on the advanced placement French language and culture course, and anybody interested in taking French, or you French learners out there, I'm soon going to be sharing a lot of videos to help bring your French up to the next level. So, merci, and thank you very much. We'll see you later.